About half a year ago, I was at a tournament and I played too long, too much, and basically I strained myself. And after that, whenever I played for everything between 5 minutes and an hour, I got really bad pain in my wrist and I basically had to stop. So what I did was I took it easy for a couple months. I tried to play only a couple times a month, and after that I started stretching. But uh, what I attribute the problem to, because this is what I found, is that whenever you press these, like you might press them 100 times a match, and every time you do that, there's this spring inside of the controller, and you have to depress it, not fully, maybe around here, like 2 centimeters, an inch, I think it's about. Um, and that takes force. And if you do that, like, it's not a lot of force, but if you do that 100 times a match and you play like 20 matches, and you do that for many days, many years, it adds up, basically. So what you can do if you want to minimize the strain on your hand when doing wave dashes or L canceling or full shielding, whatever, what you can do is either get a new one, if you can find it. But if you don't want to do that and you have a spare controller, I don't recommend doing this on a new controller, because once you do it, if you fail or if it becomes bad, then you're done. You don't have any alternatives. Um, but what you can do with this is just cut it somewhere around 20% in. So basically, the amount of force it takes to push it down is 2/3 of what it used to be. So I have another part here that I already cut, and as you can see, it has it doesn't have a flat part on this part. So basically, you just cut it wherever you think might be good, and remember to do it in increments. So maybe you cut this part first, and then this part, and then this part, and you test it between. And if you put that inside of the controller, like so, like this, right? You can test it, and you can even assemble the controller and try it. But if you do that and you just leave it like that, it's gonna get flimsy again because it doesn't have a flat top right here. Inside of the actual L and R buttons, there are these grooves inside that the spring fits inside so that it's secure in place. But with this, it's not very secure and it moves around and it can even get stuck, I think. So what I do is I used an adjustable wrench like this. I just pinched this down. And if you release it, it's just gonna spring back up. But you can use a lighter like this. Just a couple seconds. And remember, this is hot now, so just let it cool for maybe 10 seconds. And when you release it, you can see that it stays. Problem now is that it's not straight, or this one happened to be straight, but it might not be. So then you need to do the same thing where it's not. Pinch it, the adjustable or the appropriate amount, and just do the same thing. Just wait a couple seconds while it cools. And you're done. You have a nice flat top. And then you reassemble the controller, and it works just like normal. nothing different about it except that it takes less amount of force. So if I'm going to demonstrate this, I did this to the R button right here. I haven't done it to the L. So this is kind of hard to demonstrate. But if I try to press this down, it doesn't really budge until I get far down on the spring. Whoops. This side, it depresses a lot easier. Again, it's roughly maybe 2/3. You don't want to cut it too much, because like the newer ones have larger springs that are much more flexible, and the older ones have smaller springs that are more stiff. So you have to remember that. They still have roughly the same amount of, they require roughly the same amount of force, but it's just that these are larger, and you have to like take that into account, because if the spring gets smaller, then the area between having this on top, if I'm going to demonstrate that, if the spring gets smaller, then the distance between here and the top of the R or L button, then it's gonna rest somewhere in the middle, and that's not very good, in short. But just take small increments at a time and test it out, and then once you're happy with the amount of force it takes, just take a lighter and reshape it, and the result should be that every time you press R, you can use less force and strain yourself less. And if this helps you and you like it, it's a neat idea. Just tell your friends about it, because it might help them.